I know the frustration from A-level biology mark schemes, and in this video I would like to share with you my favorite tips to prepare well for your papers and to enjoy the process at the same time. I did biology at XLA, but all tips I mentioned in this video are applicable to any examination board and also any biology exam in general. First of all, biology is hard. And it takes time to learn, so be patient with yourself. Do not focus too much on your final goal, which is to score well in your A-levels, but enjoy the whole journey. Don't focus on the destination as something as, okay, I need to get an A star on A to get to your dream university. What you can do instead is to work on every step along the way, making the process as enjoyable as possible and working hard to get to this target, but do not fixate yourself on that specific goal. A-levels are 2 years program, and it's up to you to make the most out of these 2 years. I don't know why I'm doing this with my hands, but I want to emphasize that you need to keep going throughout the whole 2 years rather than not doing anything the whole 2 years and then trying to catch up in the last month or two. That's not possible. When you start working hard in your year 12, by the time you come to year 13, you are almost ready, and it's just about going into the depth of your answers to master the content. But otherwise, you should focus on the whole process. It's very important to have this long-term view and looking this as the journey rather than final destination. When you mess up one of your practice exams, it's not the end of the world. In that way, you will not get discouraged if something doesn't work along the way. If there is something that you mess up, it's absolutely fine because you keep going. It's a process. You start here at the beginning of year 12 and you finish here at the end of your year 13 with amazing grade, of course. Before I start with any practical tips, I want you to get this mindset of growth and learning. It's absolutely fine when you mess up. It's part of the process and it's amazing. When you learn from it, it's a great experience. That's what will help you the most to score the best marks in your real A-levels, when you take every opportunity to practice as something precious and amazing that you can make the most out of. My first practical tip for you is to use a variety of materials, not just your textbook. My absolute favorite is CGP book because it has an amazing structure, great diagrams. So when you follow this book, you will be absolutely fine. What's great about using a variety of materials is that you look at one topic from different perspectives. And that's what will allow you to learn the material the best. Because in your textbook, it's explained in one way. And of course, it's a concept that is true, so it must be explained in the same way from other sources too, but they might use different words, they might use different analogies, different examples that will help you to understand the material better, and you don't know when the moment comes when something clicks. That magical click will make everything clear, everything easier, and this happens so much in so many subjects that you did not understand a topic, that you struggled with a concept, and then you looked at it from a different perspective, and it suddenly clicks. It's the best feeling in the world. I really want everyone to experience, and you can do this by trying different things, experimenting with different websites, trying to look at it from different angles. Make your notes consistently as you go along. There is nothing worse than finishing up your course and finding out that you don't have notes from the beginning of the course. Before your mocks and before your real exams, you're supposed to have already a bank of materials which you can use for your revision, but when you don't have this and you have to start from scratch, it's very difficult to catch up. For notes, I strongly advise you to follow your specification point by bullet point, and making sure that your notes contain that specific information. Do not follow the linear note-taking method with your textbook that you just go page by page. Okay, this is chapter 1, let's do notes on chapter 1, and you go and you make long notes, but when you read the spec points, you're like, what's relevant from the notes I've made? You have to do it the other way around and start with the specification point you're making the notes on. You read the point, you identify the key information you need, and then go to the textbook and find those specific points. Because that's exactly what you're going to be asked for in the exam, about the questions from your specification, not about the topics from your textbook that contain a lot of fluff. The textbook tries to explain things with unnecessary sentences, and you need to identify the core concepts that you need for your notes, because you always have the textbook. Don't forget that the textbook is right there next to you, and when you're taking notes, you're trying to identify the key points and the relationship between the points. That's not the point of note-taking, right? To rewrite your textbook. You want to learn the most important, what you're going to be tested on, and you can do this only by knowing your specification very well, print it out, go through every single page, every bullet point, identify the key information, go and search it in the textbook, and then put it down into your notes. And what's really, really good when you're doing notes, not to write them linearly, but flip the page, put the main concept in the middle, and start with finding a relationship between the concepts. So identify the key topics, and after you do this, draw some arrows. It can be a first draft of your notes, so you understand what you're talking about. Always ask yourself critically, what am I learning in this specific section? There is no point in just writing notes on specific chapters without truly understanding what you're studying. If you struggle with a concept even after you read the textbook and a variety of other materials, after you ask your friends and watched hundreds of videos, then go and find your teachers and ask them for explanations one-to-one. Stay behind. It's no shame in not understanding something. The teacher is there for you. They want to help you. Understanding is crucial, and when you don't get this specific point of the learning process, you can't continue with studying and revising and trying to encode the information. Ask your friends first. If they can explain to you, great. But sometimes you find out that even your friends struggle, but they remain silent, continue studying something they don't really understand. And that's the worst. So guys, please go and find your teachers to explain the topics to you. It's so much better to ask than assuming you understand, but in reality you don't, and you learn it in the wrong way. After you ask your teacher, you can try to explain the concept to your friends to check your understanding. This is called payment technique. I talk about some great revision strategies I use to revise for exams up here, so check it out. Practice a mix of questions rather than just chapter-specific questions. This is really important because in the real exam, you are not gonna be given questions based on the chapters as they go. It would be amazing if we had an exam which starts with topics from chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3, and so on. No, it's gonna be all mixed, and it's your responsibility to learn how to relate concepts to each other. And the best way how to learn this is to practice a mix of questions. This means that even though when your teacher gives you questions from specific chapters, or when you find something online based on specific topics, it's important that you link them together. When you say you covered the whole syllabus and now you're just revising for your A-levels, what you should do is to do 2 or 3 questions from chapter 1, then do a couple of questions from chapter 7, and then 3 or 4 from chapter 4, let's say. And by this way, you will see if you can answer questions also in different order. It's good to practice 1 question from there, 1 question from there, rather than 20 questions from chapter 1 one day, and then 20 questions from chapter 4 the next day. This will help you make connections between the topics. You will learn the material so much better, so nothing will throw you off in the real paper. So you'll open the question and you'll be able to identify, aha, okay, this is from chapter 5. Rather than when you are used to just 20 questions from chapter 1, you will get a question from chapter 11 and you're like, I don't know what concept this is and how does this relate to other questions. This is a mistake, so practice this early on and you will see how this is going to help you on your exam day. Combining questions from different chapters during your revision session can slow you down a bit because it's more difficult, but you will learn the information better and also your active recall will be much stronger. My next tip is to use MARC's technique to mark all your papers. This technique is amazing to identify what do you struggle with when you answer exam questions. Every time you mark your paper, you write a letter, M-A-R-C or S, depending on what type of error you made. M stands for maths error. So anytime you make a mistake in calculation, you put M next to your wrong answer. A stands for application. This means that you missed marks when you were supposed to apply the knowledge to that specific question. Anytime you are given a question within a specific context and you failed to incorporate the theory you learned, the general basic biology knowledge you know, to that specific context, you put an A next to your wrong answer. That means you miss application marks, which are very, very important to score you A stars and A's. You need your application. You need to be able to put the general knowledge concept into specific context. So if you struggle with this, keep practicing more and more application questions. R stands for reading the question. So this stands for mistakes that you have made just because you misread the question, or you were just very quick and you read the first part of the sentence and you were like, oh, I know this, and you started immediately writing your answer without finishing the sentence and identifying the key element of that question. That's the reason why you did it wrong. C stands for communication, and this marks were lost because even though you understood the question, even though you answered it well, you didn't use specific words. So this is where the most frustration comes from A-level biology, is that you need to use specific words. You can't use the word bacteria attaches to the surface, you have to say bacteria binds to the surface. The more papers you practice, the easier this is gonna get, because you'll get used to the specific words you need to use. K stands for knowledge, so anything that you got wrong because you just didn't learn it well, that's your knowledge problem. S stands for statement, and this is type of error that's not error itself, but it's losing marks. And this means that, let's say the question is worth 4 marks and you just put answer worth 2 marks. This means that you have to develop your knowledge further and learn how to, let's say, analyze in greater depth to get all those 4 marks, not just 2. So every time you find yourself marking your paper and you see, okay, you covered bullet points 1 and 2, but there is like 5 more potential marks you could get, but you didn't get it because either you didn't know it or you didn't answer it correctly, put S, which means you made a statement error. I learned this technique from Unjaded Jade, and it really helped me when I was marking my papers. It completely structured the way how I approached learning from my papers, because every time I went through the paper and marked it using the mark scheme, and then with this technique I saw what I struggled the most with, and this means that I could focus on the areas that made the biggest problem in my papers. Whether it was application or statement or knowledge, you can clearly see what you're doing wrong and what loses you the most marks. Use a bunch of online resources out there. There are so many great websites that you can use to enhance your learning. My favorite ones were Physics and Math Tutor, Snap Revise, BioRevise, and some other resources, and I will link them all for you down below. Another tip is to practice an active recall as much as you can, because biology is all about processes, whether it's photosynthesis, respiration, muscle contraction, blood clotting. You need to know the process and you need to get the order right. My recommendation and strategy that I use is to identify one keyword in each step of the process. This can be a noun, this can be a verb, something that triggers you to know the whole step and that guides your answer. Let's look at an example of a blood clotting process. I have my notes here with me, and let's go through the whole process together to identify that. Usually one, but sometimes it can be more keywords. Firstly, blood vessels are damaged, exposing collagen in the wall. The keyword is damage. You have to learn that. Sometimes it's tempting to be like, oh, but collagen is exposed. And yes, that's important too, but it's the second step of the learning process. Let's start with identifying just one word out of each process that triggers your answer. Then, second step says platelets change from flattened discs to spheres with long thin projections when they come into contact with the damaged blood vessel. This is a bit more complicated because there are many keywords and everything is important. It feels like that, but what is important, I think, in this step is the change of shape. Imagine change of shape, and that's how you start guiding your process all the way from the start till the end. I made these amazing notes. It's 135 pages. It's the whole syllabus of edXLA. So if you're interested in, I will link them for you down below and you can check it out, and I hope this will help you guide your revision. These notes allowed me to score an A in biology, so if you want an A too, then go and grab them down below. I'm not gonna go through the whole process now because I have some more tips for you and I don't want this video to be too long, but I think you get the point now. If you want to make the whole process of learning biology for your A-levels much more enjoyable, then I recommend getting a whiteboard and some pens and practicing drawing the diagrams and everything on your mini whiteboard. Also the steps of the process, the activity we just went through, you can do it on a mini whiteboard and then wipe it out and have fun. And it's always nice to be able to draw things with different colored pens, and sometimes when you don't want to use tons of paper, it's nice to get something like this. I use this for my economics too, for drawing the diagrams, and yeah, it's fun when you also try to explain the concept. So imagine you're a teacher and you've got your own students, then use your mini whiteboard to explain the concept to someone else. My next tip is to know your practicals and your maths questions well. Practicals are really important, and you will start appreciating it when you start practicing the papers more and more, and you will see that many questions worth 6 to 8 marks rely on your knowledge of these experiments. You need to know them very well to get points in these questions. Do not underestimate this, and even though you didn't get the experiment during the class when you did the experiment, There are so many great videos out there which you can watch. The experiments are fully explained in these videos for you, so just search the specific experiment. It's gonna be with methods, it's gonna be used with all the equipment, with conclusions, and you just need to learn this and understand it. And again, how does this link to your general biology concepts you studied? When you know your practical, you won't be thrown away by a question that talks about the experiment, but in a different context. And that's the point of the question, to throw you off a bit. But when you know your practical well and you know what does it relate to, they can give you any application context and you will know what to do. Another thing is maths. There is maths in A-level biology. Actually, 10% of all the questions being asked are maths related, but it's not complicated at all. Quite the opposite. It's often very trivial and easy maths. You just need to practice those questions. And there is a CGP book dedicated just to the maths. It helped me to understand every single math concept I needed for the exams, and then I didn't struggle with maths question during my A-levels. So when you're in doubt whether you will know this maths part of your biology syllabus, purchase this book. You will know how to answer any maths question that comes up. This book also contains 3 stat tests you need for your exams, so it's good to have it all in one place. And I can really recommend this book to everyone. Another tip is to revise with your friends. This is the best recommendation I can give to anyone. And I think this is the one thing that boosted my biology grade. A couple of weeks before my relay levels, I decided to revise with a friend. But I was hesitating at first. How is this gonna be? Like, I revise the best on my own, where I can sit down with the books, I can learn the concept, I can practice, done. I revised with my friend, and everything that we covered together came up in the papers. Everything, all the processes we went through together, all the concepts we explained to each other, it came up. So when you revise with your friends, you will naturally ask each other questions and you will explain the processes to each other. You will find out that, oh, there is a step in this process which you're not really sure about and you don't know how does it link to other steps in the process. Your friend can explain to you, and then you can explain to him or her another concept, and you will see how much you learn from these sessions. This doesn't have to be long. We did usually around half an hour, sometimes an hour. We did this a couple of times before our relay levels, and it helped me so much. So I really encourage you, find that one friend who you're gonna revise with. If you prefer bigger groups, okay. I would stick with one person or 2 people who you feel connected to, who you want to revise with, and who share also the same mindset and the same type of learning to understand, not just learning to pass the exam. If I could just recommend you one thing out of this whole video to do before your exams, it would be this one. Understanding is crucial in biology, so do not rely on pre-learned answers. It's really good to know your processes, to know the content, but you always have to apply your general knowledge to answer specific questions. This is something you will struggle the most with, and this is what I struggle the most with, and I think every A-level biology student struggles with this at one point during the 2 years, to be able to apply your answers to specific questions. This tests whether you understood the concept and whether you can use it in real life. Remember that the core is always very simple. When you learn the basic and you have this foundation very strong, every detail you add becomes more and more specific and more complicated, but the core remains simple. It remains the same. And when you build on this solid base, then you can apply your knowledge to any concept. I can ask you anything and you will know how to answer it. As I mentioned that you should mix different types of materials to learn your content, you should also mix learning days and practice days. Do not have just days when you revise and when you consume the material, but also mix it up with some practice exercises. This will allow you to learn the content as you go along, rather than consuming first and then having days where you're going to practice and test your knowledge. Because by the time you cover everything, you'll forget the thing you studied at the beginning. But when you learn something and you practice it, it will stick. Try this. It's going to slow down your revision session again. Everything that slows you down a bit, but it is a good method. It's worth trying. Trust me, I went through this and I know how this works. But when you mix learning and revising with practicing, with real papers, it's going to change your revision. It's going to change your understanding and learning. Do not underestimate pre-reading. Now you can be like, whoa, I already have enough on my plate and I don't have time to read before the class. something which is going to be explained to me in the class, right? I get this, but our brain works the best when it can link the new information to something we are familiar with. This means that every time you prepare for your class, it can be 5-10 minutes. Skimming through a textbook, watching some videos, reading some articles, being able to, just with curiosity and with open mindset, absorb the material, you will see how the information sticks, and you will save yourself time later down the road when you will be able to make the connections much better. This is how we learn. We try to link something new to what we already know. If you don't want to read your textbook before the class, I completely get that, but there are so many great videos out there that gives you a great intro to the topic. I can recommend Amoeba Sisters. It's a great YouTube channel that explains biology concepts in animated way. I will put the link to their YouTube channel down below. This is a really good way how to pre-learn what you're going to cover in the class. Give yourself time to forget. This is called spaced repetition, and it's a very famous strategy, but what you're supposed to do is to increase the intervals within which you revise. By allowing this, your brain will forget some information, and every time you actively recall the information, you will remember it better. Do not think that to learn biology well and to score the best marks, you need to revise long hours every single day. When you just constantly revise, you only put the information in your short-term memory, but our ultimate goal is to put it into long-term memory and encode the information so it stays there long after you finish your A-level exams. If you're interested in general secrets to exam success, I made a video about it, so you can watch it up there. Don't forget to check the description box for all the links and resources I mentioned in this video, and also the link to my biology notes. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye guys.